Okay, now we're at video number 16. So in this video, I thought I'd ask a question. Here it is. Who really is the faithful and discreet slave? The same question that Jesus Christ asked. Good question, huh? So I'll go to Matthew chapter 24 and we'll read what Jesus Christ said again. And it's in Matthew chapter 24 verse, I'll start in verse 43. And of all the things that Jehovah's Witnesses are taught in regards to Matthew chapter 24, there's one thing they really don't spend much time thinking about. And this one thing is in verse 43. So listen carefully. But know one thing, that if the householder had known in what watch the thief was coming, he would have kept awake and not allowed his house to be broken into. On this account, you too prove yourselves to be ready, because at an hour that you do not think to be it, the Son of Man is coming. The one thing we need to know. So you can read all of Matthew chapter 24 and make attempts to understand it. But what's the one thing we should really be thinking about? That's it. So that's a good question. Has Jesus Christ come as a thief? And if he's coming as a thief, what is he going to steal? Television sets? Stereos? Jewelry? No, Jesus Christ is going to steal people. So, has he stolen people? Well, if you're still watching this video series, then it's likely you believe that he has indeed stolen hundreds of thousands of people all around the world. And those people are now in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. So now what? Well, we'll keep reading. This is where he asks the question. And remember, he is coming as a thief. But eventually, he is going to appear. And remember in Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 5, he must appear with rejoicing on your part. So there's a difference between coming as a thief and appearing and then rejoicing. Think about that. So here we go. I'll ask the question. Verse 45. Who really is the faithful and discreet slave whom his master appointed over his domestics to give them their food at the proper time? Happy is that slave if his master, on arriving, finds him doing so. Truly I say to you, he will appoint him over all his belongings. So, who really is the faithful and discreet slave? Notice here it said he'd be happy if he finds them feeding his domestics. So, doesn't that remind you of Armageddon? Let's go. We'll read it again. Armageddon in the book of Revelation, chapter 16. Listen carefully to what Jesus Christ said would happen in the Lord's day. Verse 15 of Revelation chapter 16. Look, I am coming as a thief. Happy is the one that stays awake and keeps his outer garments, that he may not walk naked, and people look upon his shamefulness. And they gathered them together to the place that is called in Hebrew Armageddon. So if that's why it's important for you to watch that video. Jehovah's Witnesses, when is Armageddon? And so that brings up an important question. What is the food? Where do you get it? And then who are the domestics that you're supposed to feed it to? And when is the proper time? All good questions. But here's another question. Who is the evil slave? Well, let's keep reading. But if ever that evil slave should say in his heart, my master is delaying, and should start to beat his fellow slaves, and should eat and drink with the confirmed drunkards, the master of that slave will come on a day that he does not expect, and in an hour that he does not know, and will punish him with the greatest severity, and will assign him his part with the hypocrites. So we need to be looking for a very special time, the proper time, that the faithful slave can see, and they're awake, and the evil slave cannot see it, and they're not able to determine that it is the hour. And because they can't do that, They're hypocrites. Right? So, can you think of anyone claiming to be rulers of the people in Jesus Christ's kingdom who are now obliged to say in their hearts, my master is delaying? Well, think about this. Millions now living will never die. So, are they all dead? And in fact, those millions, what kind of promise was made to those millions? Jesus Christ should have by now appeared, and those millions should be living in a paradise on earth. So, who are obliged to say in their heart, my master is delaying? The people that said, millions now living will never die. Now they're all dead. There's nothing else they can say. Jesus Christ must have delayed. And they're hypocrites who cannot see that time, the hour. They're hypocrites. So now, I'm going to go to Luke chapter 12. And we'll find something out about the hypocrites. So here it is in Luke chapter 12. I'll start in verse 49. I came to start a fire on the earth, and what more is there for me to wish if it has already been lighted? Indeed, I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and how I am being distressed until it is finished. Do you imagine I came to give peace on the earth? No, indeed, I tell you, but rather division. For from now on, there will be 5 in one house divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against her mother-in-law, and mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. So, when that fire is lit, we can expect families all around the world to be divided and separated. So, in regards to the evil slave, the hypocrites, let's read what Jesus then went on to say to those very same crowds. In verse 54, then he went on to say to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in western parts, at once you say, a storm is coming, and it turns out so. And when you see that a south wind is blowing, you say, there will be a heat wave, and it occurs. Hypocrites! You know how to examine the outward appearance of earth and sky, but how is it you do not know how to examine this particular time? The proper time? Is this the proper time then? He's calling them hypocrites. So the people who do not see Jesus Christ coming as a thief, they'll be the hypocrites, the evil slave. And they won't be able to examine this particular time. So what is the one thing that all Jehovah's Witnesses should have been doing? Instead of focusing on all those other things in the book of Matthew, they should have been looking for a particular time when families all around the world would be divided and separated. Were they awake? Did they notice? No, they think their master must have been delaying, because those millions of people who really did die should have by now been living on a paradise earth. Hypocrites. But what about you? If the evil slave is saying in his heart, my master is delaying, what would you expect the faithful slave to be saying? He already came as a thief. Happy are you if you stay awake and keep your outer garments white. Outer garments. Okay, so then what is the food that should be fed to the domestics? Because certainly then now is the proper time. But what is this food? I'm going to go back to John chapter 15 and see if you can tell what the food is. Here we go. Verse 26. When the Helper arrives, that I will send you from the Father, the Spirit of the truth, which proceeds from the Father, that one will bear witness about me. And you in turn are to bear witness, because you have been with me from when I began. I have spoken these things to you that you may not be stumbled. Men will expel you from the synagogue. In fact, the hour is coming when everyone that kills you will imagine they have rendered a sacred service to God. But they will do these things because they have not come to know either the Father or me. Nevertheless, I have spoken these things to you, that when the hour for them arrives, you may remember I told them to you. So, what's the food? I'll go to verse 13 of John chapter 16 now. However, when that one arrives, the Spirit of the truth, he will guide you into all the truth. For he will not speak of his own impulse, but what things he hears, he will speak, and he will declare to you the things coming. The food. all the truth. And who obtains this truth? Those men who have been expelled. When the hour, the proper time, arrives. Remember? This is what Jesus Christ said. And so, when you have this food, what should you do? You, in turn, are to bear witness. So, now's the proper time. But when there's one piece of the puzzle missing here. Who are your domestics? Well, a domestic is someone that lives in your house, a family, right? Your domestics are your family. So, if this is the proper time, then who's your domestics? Let's go find out. So who are your domestics? Mark chapter 10, verse 29. Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, men, no one has left house, or brothers, or sisters, or mother, or father, or children, or fields for my sake, and for the sake of the good news." So, there you go. There's some domestics that you've left behind in the kingdom halls. But let's keep reading, because there's more domestics here. Who will not get 100-fold now in this period of time, houses and brothers and sisters and mothers and children and fields with persecutions, and in the coming system of things, everlasting life. So that just completely expanded what your domestics, or who your domestics are. They're all the people inside the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. So you have domestics right now. Those hundreds of thousands of people all around the world who Jesus Christ came as a thief to steal. And you also have those domestics that you've left behind in the kingdom halls of Jehovah's Witnesses. And to finish this off, I'm going to go to Romans again and remind you what the Apostle Paul wished for. It's in verse 3 of Romans chapter 9. "For I could wish that I myself were separated as the cursed one from the Christ in behalf of my brothers, my relatives according to the flesh, on behalf of your domestics." So, do you know what the time is? The proper time? Do you know what the food is? All the truth. Do you know who the domestics are? The family you've left behind, and the new family, the hundreds who are now with you in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. They're all your domestics. So you in turn are to bear witness. Who really is the faithful and discreet slave?